Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Railroad Transportation Safety District meeting for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. I will now call the meeting to order. This meeting of the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District, commonly referred to as the RTSD, is subject to and adheres to the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection and is posted by the entrance to this room. The RTSD agenda for today's meeting was posted on the RTSD website on February 26, 2025. The RTSD website is also accessible by links from both the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County official government sites. In addition, on February 26, 2025, the meeting agenda was posted on the bulletin boards located in the City Hall, first floor, 555 South 10th Street. A copy of the agenda is also available at the entrance to this room. One copy of the meeting agenda and all the materials being considered today are located at the dais, and complete copies of these materials are on file at the RTSD office, 949 West Bond Street, Suite 200. That brings us to item number 3, approval of the minutes from the December meeting. I would entertain a motion and second to approve.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Carlson, second by James. Please call the roll.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Abstain.
and Vest.
Yes. Motion carries 3-0, one abstention. Item number 4, report of financial activity, Kevin Nelson.
Good morning, Kevin Nelson, Assistant Budget and Fiscal Officer for Lancaster County. So before you is the Statement of Financial Activity as of February 14th. Through that date, total revenues for the year accounted to just shy of $5.6 million, and total disbursements were $205,000. Pretty much as far as revenue goes, we're pretty close to being right on budget, and in fact, if you look at the investment interest income, we're almost right on, but we're almost got our budget for the year. So we're doing pretty well there. From a disbursement side, we're about 4% of our budget spent, so real good on that side. Cash and investments, our bank balance with the net transactions pending was $942,537, and our investment balance, which mostly consisted of CDs at this point, was $40,785,031. Since the date of our last report on November 15th, we had $1,875,000 of CDs mature. We took those CDs, added in about $1.6 million sitting in money market, and another $1.2 million of revenue, and we purchased $4,775,000 of CDs. Those CDs ranged in interest rates from 4.21% to 4.8%. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of change in our interest rates right now. You know, a year ago we were seeing upper 4s to 5%. We're now seeing, closer to the 4.2, 4.4%. Since the date of this report, we did purchase a $600,000 18-month CD at 4.2%. So with that, that's the report I have for this quarter. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Kevin regarding the financial statement? Thank you, Kevin. We do need to approve the statement of financial activity.
I will second.
Motion by Sean, second by Justin. Call the roll.
Carlson,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Item number 5, report regarding current budget status.
Roger Feigert representing the RTSD. Good morning. I want to welcome
Commissioner Flowerday to the board and thank him for his willingness to serve on the board. It's appreciated.
Your responsibility to keep him in mind.
So, with the President's approval, I'll just address items both 5 and 6, which is
That'd
the
be fine,
report
Roger.
regarding budget status and a draft budget for next year. Again, our budget year ends June 30, and the new one starts July 21. And I don't have any concerns financially or where we are in the current operating budget. We've paid out all of the funds for the accounting and auditing. We're about 60% through with legal services. Insurance is all paid for this year. I don't anticipate any issues in being able to stay on track within the operating budget for the rest of this year. In the construction project areas, we haven't spent any money yet for crossing improvements, but I did receive this week an invoice from the City of Lincoln for $250,000 for the RTSD share to remove Union Pacific's railroad tracks on Northwest 12th out there by the interstate. If you remember, that's been an ongoing long-term program. That reimbursement request comes through the master agreement between the City of Lincoln and the RTSD to pay for railroad-related expenditures up to the amount that's left in our budget. Currently, we have $250,000 in the budget. I have reviewed and told LTU that I thought the RTS that met the intent of the master agreement. I'll be reviewing those again and then sending them on to the president for signature and payment. So that $250,000 should go through in the next couple of weeks.
And have we already approved that, Roger, the 250? I mean, was that part of
The
last
250 is
year's?
part of the regular budget that was approved in June and just carries on. And then expenditures in there can be approved through the master agreement with the city, or if there's other projects that come up or activity, the city sends an invoice and I'll bring that invoice to the board to ask for payment. But
Okay.
yes, we had discussed that previously.
It's a big get, and that's that road
Yeah.
just north of the airport, and those tracks had not been maintained. I don't know, last time they were used, it was forever. And
I don't recall seeing a train cross those tracks in the last 15 or 20 years. So
yeah,
it's
So
it's good to
taking-
get those out of there.
smoothing that road out
Yes.
is a good deal.
Right. And the city went ahead and will be doing additional improvements on Northwest 12th on west and then Highlands Boulevard to the east as well as part of their Lincoln on the Move project too. So we got in and made things a little easier for them. The only other real expenditure is 33rd and crossing. Chris will come up later and talk a little bit about where the status. We had budgeted $4.2 million. We have spent less than $100,000 on that this year as things have kind of idled.
In the future budget, is the 4.2 in the FY '26, is that just the same 4.2, you're assuming that it's encumbered over, or is that?
This year, if what we don't spend goes back into cash, it gets rebudgeted. I'd like to reserve the time between now and the June meeting to get a better sense of what is actually happening in Washington with grants and those kinds of things.
Think you're gonna figure it out in 90 days?
We can hope. We can hope. So there'll probably be a different.
Luck on that, I agree.
Yes. As a minimum, I'm hoping that that in 26, that budgeted amount would have the money to pay for final design and potentially, if we have a discussion with the board, starting some early right-of-way acquisition, assuming the environmental document is signed and that we're moving ahead. But so we need to just continue to be patient and wait for that. In the proposed budget for 26, I am proposing that we would increase the superintendent services. The 25 budget was 58. We actually spent, the city billed us for 62 last year. So I'm suggesting we make that 70. That would account for inflation. Our current interlocal agreement between the city and the RTSD provides that we will reimburse LTU 25% of the Assistant Director of Transportation or the city engineer's salary with fringe benefits. So whatever that is, we need to pay that. If it comes in less than 70, obviously we just spend less than that. Support services I left at 15,000. I did increase the legal services from proposing that it would go from 10,000 to 12,000 in this upcoming year as we continue to move ahead with 33rd and Cornhusker. I'm asking Mr. Kudelek for additional work and effort in putting documents together and coordinating between the City of Lincoln and NDOT. The accounting and audit service is $18,800. That's exactly the amount that was in the budgeting and audit contract with HBE that the board approved in December. So just regurgitating that. Left the rest of the numbers pretty much where they were. So, and again, this is a draft. The draft really considers 33rd and Cornhusker remaining the #1 priority project for the RTSD as we move ahead. We have the 250,000 in we have 300,000 in miscellaneous engineering and 200,000 in emergency and safety to pay for those other things that might come up that the board might want to consider in the interim. The one other thing I should have identified was the board also approved an interlocal agreement with the city.
We have a question.
Quick question
sorry.
here, Roger.
Yeah.
Going back on expenses, on commissions.
Yes.
What is included in that? And if we're going to be spending more with 33rd and Cornhusker, is that going to increase significantly, or is that not proportionally based?
That is the commissions that are owed the county treasurer by statute for collecting the money from
Okay.
the property tax and getting it over to the RTSD, as well as managing the investments and working with Kevin and I.
Okay.
So that is just a percentage of
Great.
what comes in.
What comes in? Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Yes. And just a reminder, we have a $295,000 budget item for assisting the city of Lincoln in the construction of the trail along Beal Slough that goes underneath the OPPD bridge just west of South 70th Street. That was approved in an interlocal agreement. I have not yet seen an invoice from them. If we don't get invoiced, I would just carry that money over into the next year. And again, then I would say this is a draft. If there are some things that interest the board members that aren't here or covered, we certainly will be working on those and then watching what happens with 33rd and Cornhusker as we move ahead. And that's my report on current budget and draft budget. I'd answer any questions you might have.
Just a couple quick ones, Roger, and then I'll turn it over to the other members here. But a small increase in legal services, you said, and is largely due to the fact that things are going to start moving at a more rapid rate at 33rd and Cornhusker. A small increase in the auditing service, and then a small increase in superintendent services. Was that the one?
Yes, yes. Yep.
And that's our obligation to the city based
Right.
on engineering services that are provided.
Correct.
Okay. Looks pretty straightforward. Any other questions, comments?
$5.5 million budget, it's going up 16,000 in a year.
Probably the other thing I would say as far as the increase in the legal contract, I've been trying to do a better job of reviewing records and information, board action, board activity, and working with Mr. Kudelek to codify, have those things saved and stored in an appropriate place for records for the future of anyone else.
I guess I do have one question. It's not exactly the budget, but it's close. What percentage of the 4.2 is that?
Would be about 10% because we're around 40 million, I think.
Real close.
Yeah. Which I don't think we would spend probably that much next year. I think if we get into final design, Sean, the actual final design will probably be in the range of $1 million. So, okay.
Look, if we got to spend 4.2 million on 33rd and Cornhusker next year, I'd be jumping the truck.
Yes.
Believe it. Yeah. Very good. That's it for 5 and 6 then, Roger.
Yes.
We'll move on to item number 7, consideration of the legal contract.
I'd ask Mr. Kudelik to come up. We're asking again for the continuation of the services of Crosby Gunzel that have been long-term servants and providers of legal research, information, direction, advice over the course of the years. And Bill is here to just explain the contract, and I would tell the board that I wholeheartedly support the continuation of these services.
Thank you, Roger. Bill Kudelek, Crosby Gunzel Law Firm, 134th South 13th Street. Crosby Gunzel is a firm of 5 lawyers. I'm one of them. I'm the one that's been before the board most often, although one of my partners carries over at times. What you have, and we've had the privilege of serving the RTSD for most of its existence, if not all of it. My predecessors, I've enjoyed the ability to work with Roger over the last couple decades, I guess, at this point in time. But what you have before you is our simple contract. This is a form that basically I inherited years ago, and very simple. The rates have stayed the same the last couple of years with respect to this. I talked with my partners about this, and this is one of our projects that I enjoy and our firm enjoys, the relationship we have with the RTSD, and certainly try to be cognizant of the expenditures and be as efficient as we can with respect to rates. You can use me and my firm as much or as little as the board wishes. And so certainly I think it has maybe a 30-day window on terminating it, but if you do not want me to conduct any legal services, you just let us know. We work as requested. So with that, if you have any questions, I again appreciate the opportunity.
Any questions for Bill? I guess I'm the longest serving member here now, Bill, which shocks me to stop and think about that. But you've been here longer than I have, I know that, and I've appreciated your input over my time of service here. Glad that you're willing to continue and appreciate what seems like very reasonable rates. So
Thank you.
thank you. If there's no questions, we would need to take action on this item.
I might just make one comment for the public listening too, that the rates in here are a significantly discounted rate over normal legal hourly costs for a partner and associates. So that I want folks to recognize that. They're
Very good. Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Move to accept the consideration of legal contract as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Justin, second by James to approve item number 7. Please call the roll.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Motion is approved, 4-0.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
Item number 8, consideration of the interlocal agreement with the City of Lincoln regarding LOTM.
So, Elizabeth Elliott, Director of LTU, is here today to share this item with us. And so, Elizabeth, there is.
All right, thanks, Roger. And thank you, Commissioner Vest and members of the Railroad Transportation Safety District. I do have just a short presentation and should be able to walk through it in just a few minutes. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions. All right, and as Roger said, I'm Liz Elliott, Director of Lincoln Transportation Utilities, 555 South 10th Street. And today I'm here to talk about Lincoln on the Move and see if I can figure out the navigation tools on this. And the proposal before you is a new interlocal agreement between the city and the RTSD. This would continue to allow us to complete final engineering and construction of the 33rd and Cornhusker project. So before I kind of get into that, just want to kind of make sure we're all familiar of how we got here and why this is before all of you. So back in 2018, there was a coalition of community members that found that there was a gap in the street funding, a $33 million annual gap. And so a year later, in 2019, the community helped close that gap by voting in favor of a 1/4-cent sales tax, better known as Lincoln on the Move. As part of that ballot resolution and as required by state law, an interlocal agreement is required with another political subdivision. We thought, given that this is the focus of streets and safety of our community, 33rd and Cornhusker was a perfect project to partner with the Railroad Transportation District on that. And back in 2019, the Railroad Transportation Safety District Board at that time also agreed and approved an interlocal for design of 33rd and Cornhusker. This 1/4-cent sales tax ends in September, which means the funding from that and for the RTSD partnership on 33rd and Cornhusker, that ends in September as well. The money does continue until October because the sales tax revenue is about a month behind, but the actual collection of that will end in the end of September of this year. The City Council has approved to put a request to the community on the April 8th ballot to continue the Lincoln on the Move initiative. We would like to also, if that is approved, continue the work with you on 33rd and Cornhusker project there. So what this ask is of the community is a continuation of what's already in place. So this would not create a new cost to the taxpayers. It would simply continue the 1/4-cent. So when the 1/4-cent sales tax ends September 30th, October 1st, the 1/4-cent sales tax would just continue. So it's not an increase on what already exists. The one difference is this proposal is for 8 years instead of 6 years like the one approved in 2019. The 6-year program delivered $102 million by the end of September. A continuation for 8 years, we estimate about $140 million in additional street improvements. It would follow the same guidelines and funding split, with 1.5% going to the Railroad Transportation Safety District project at 33rd and Cornhusker, 25% to growth, so think the fringes of the city, and then 73.5% to existing streets within Lincoln. That 1.5% in the first 6 years brought in just over $1.5 million for the 33rd and Cornhusker project. If Lincoln on the Move is continued for another 8 years, we anticipate that we would be able to contribute an additional just under $2.2 million with that 1.5 for 8 years. So what does that mean? As you all know and was talked about just a little bit ago, the 33rd and Cornhusker project has recently received the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant. The local matching funds for that are predominantly RTSD funds with a contribution of a little over 1.5 million from the first years of Lincoln on the Move. When we applied for that Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant, we put in that only the funds we knew we had, which was the 1.5 from Lincoln on the Move, the Railroad Transportation Safety District's contribution, the NDOT's, the Nebraska Department of Transportation, and then the railroad. If Lincoln on the Move is continued and this interlocal is approved and that 1.5% continues to go to 33rd, this would reduce the local match contribution required by the RTSD by that corresponding amount, so roughly $2.2 million. So that would ultimately give the RTSD about $2.2 million more to invest in other railroad projects and reduce that local match. So with all of that, what is before you today is an interlocal agreement. The difference from the last one to this one is it adds construction because we're at that point now. So it's finish up design plus construction. It's the 1.5% of Lincoln on the Move that would be dedicated to this project. Biggest question, what happens, because April 8th is still a ways away, what happens if if you approve this today, but the voters don't approve the continuation? This interlocal basically terminates itself. So a little James Bond explodes on self-impact. That's essentially, this would just terminate if that is not approved. There would be no interlocal. It would continue with the funds through whatever's collected through September of this year, and that's what we would move forward with. So I went through that pretty fast, but happy to answer any questions or go back to any particular point that would be helpful.
Any questions? Liz and I have talked about this before, and I'm all in favor of it. I think Lincoln on the Move has been a success in achieving the aims that it was designed to pursue. I feel good about that, and our role is very small, so the fact that we're getting $1.5 million and another $2.2 million is just helpful to us. So, Roger.
I just would say the city has been a really good partner in this project, in the Lincoln on the Move, and $1 million here and $1 million there certainly adds up and pays to get us a long ways along. So my recommendation and encouragement to the board would be to support this and move ahead and continue that relationship. I think that's a good thing to do.
Just one thing, I mean, Liz said, and I believe her, but Bill, we have you here. If we approve it and the voters do not approve it in April, then the contract is just null and void. It'll end at that September.
Miss Elliott was very accurate and did a good job on that, yes. The only differences between this contract and the last one are, the original one was 6 years, this one's 8 years. This one has the condition on approval by the voters. If the voters do not approve it, the contract is ineffective. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, any discussion, gentlemen? Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Move approval.
I will second.
Motion by Sean, second by Justin to approve. Please call the roll.
Vest,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Flowerday.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Onward to number 9, consideration of Operation Lifesaver financial support.
Over the last 4 or 5 years, the RTSD has been a financial supporter for the operations portion of Operation Lifesaver, an organization that promotes safety and the reduction of conflicts between trains, pedestrians, cars, bicyclists. They serve a really good service. I attend the regular monthly meetings. We all know that trains always win if there is an unfortunate conflict. And our support of that operation, I think, goes a long ways in trying to protect our travelers and provide education with sheriff's departments, police departments, in the school systems, showing up at county fairs all across the state to work on that idea of safety. Last year, the board approved $1,000. The invoice that came in has some options requested. There's a bronze level up to $300, silver is $500, a gold contribution is $1,000, and platinum is anything over $1,000. Last year, the board did approve a $1,000 contribution to the organization, and I would leave it up to the board for your discussion, consideration of what you might do. I think this is a good contribution to make.
Very good. Great organization, and I would just add to Roger's comments that the trains always win, but there are human beings sitting in the cabs of those locomotives, and it's very, very challenging for them, some of the things they see when there are these collisions at grade crossings. So it's good for everybody to have an organization reducing this. Any thoughts?
Go to 1001.
That's what I that's kind of sneaky, but
They gotta set platinum at 2,500. What are they doing?
Yeah. Well, let's do that. Let's do 250, 1,250. Okay with that?
I think that makes a lot of sense too. And as we look at our own financials too, the CD that matured, I assume was at a lower rate that then we replaced it with too. I think there's some profit, if you will, too, from our good fiscal management. So it makes sense to bump it up a little bit here too for this worthy cause.
Very good. Do I hear a motion there?
So moved.
I will second.
Motion by Sean, second by Justin to contribute 1,250 solidly in the platinum range, I would say, to the Operation
It's
Life
fundraising
Saving.
101. You don't make a overlay.
Yeah, don't make it so easy on us. Very good. Please call the roll.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0, and please express our deepest appreciation to them, Roger.
I will do that.
Item number 10, consideration of LTU barricade invoice. What are you guys barricading out there now?
Well, the work's already done.
Okay.
Sometimes when there's disrepair, significant disrepair at a railroad crossing, the railroad comes in kind of an emergency situation to get the repair done. And they aren't always able to provide the barricades or get a barricade company in, and they have contacted, and LTU has graciously helped out and provide barricades, got things protected so those repairs can happen very quickly and get out. And this is an invoice for $643.50 for 2 sets of barricades there at 70th and Cornhusker. That's just north of Fletcher. That's the crossing that goes into the new salvage yard to the east side. And those panels, concrete panels, came up and got loose, and they were really creating probably a dangerous situation. The railroad got there quickly. So I would just simply propose we would, if the board agrees and approves a reimbursement of that invoice, that would just come out of the emergency and safety line item of the budget.
Okay. Make a motion to approve this payment for the $640.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Justin, second by Sean to approve. Please call the roll.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Vest.
Yes, very important corridor in our city, I would just say that. Item number 11.
Okay, I'll ask Chris Humphrey, who is the current RTSD 33rd and Cornhusker project manager, come up and give us an update on that project.
And I assume Chris will answer the question, will we spend $4.2 million?
I hope so. Good morning. I'm Chris Humphrey, the 33rd and Cornhusker project manager that Liz and Roger had talked about before. The big news financially is the RCE grant that was awarded for the project. It's almost $67 million that's currently on hold, as well as the other grants that were awarded in that program too. So we'll be keeping our eye on that in Washington. We are cautiously optimistic that since that grant supports infrastructure, that we will see at least a portion of it, if not all of it, coming back to the project. So definitely something to keep our eyes on. In the meantime, we are wrapping up the environmental document. So this was an environmental assessment. We held our public hearing last fall. So kind of the steps that happen after that is we have what's called an errata. It's basically like an addendum, just kind of cleaning up little tiny things that have happened since the public hearing and making sure everything is as up to date as we can get it. That had been submitted to the state, who then submitted it to FHWA, And currently, those documents are being reviewed and signed in Washington, D.C. So that document has been sent to headquarters, FHWA headquarters, and it's currently under review. And we'll hopefully hear back here shortly that had been signed or any questions that they have on that. We're also coordinating with the Dead Man's Run project team. That design has been moving forward. They're anticipating to have final design completed yet later this year, so we're doing a lot of coordination at the 33rd Street crossing there with Dead Man's Run, with the hydraulics and the bridge over the channel there. Next steps that we have going on, we need to get a consultant on board for final design services. We won't be able to enter into an agreement until the environmental document is completely signed, but we're hopeful that we can start at least the process of putting together an RFQ, perhaps going through the actual selection process, but not entering into an agreement until the environmental document is signed. And then with that, we'll kind of see where we are with the grant, see what we can do, if there's any way we can advance anything with right-of-way. If we are able to advance anything with right-of-way, then we do have hope that we would be spending the $4.2 million this next year. But as Roger said, yeah, a lot of that would be going towards final design services for sure.
So the environmental document, that is the step that we've gotten held up on in the past. Is that fair, Chris? I mean, we've done a lot of work, submitted it, and then it was not accepted or approved at the higher level.
Yeah, we're still going through the process, so this is like the final approval step. There's certain steps along the way that we needed to take. So public hearing was one of those big milestones. So after the public hearing, then it's this errata document that we created, and then and the approval of that, then we have what we're hopeful is called a FONSI, the finding of no significant impact. So, and that's the document that we're waiting for, that we can then move forward into final design.
Okay. That's the one we have to have before we can go forward then.
Correct, yes, yep, that's kind of a stop point for us.
Well, there were some concerns that came out at the public hearing, and I mean, will those then be addressed in final design? Is that the time where we'll be looking at that and saying, here's the options we have?
Yes, and we have met with some property owners just to talk about the process with them. But yeah, anything that kind of in final design, it's identifying the access points, getting a little bit more detailed into the design, like enclosed storm sewer systems, the erosion control. Things that don't change the actual footprint of the project, but it's kind of those small details for the project. Although, you know, for the property owners that we're working with and driveway access locations, obviously that's not small to them, but that is a final design issue that we'll be working through with them.
Okay. Real good. Any excuse me, any questions for Chris then?
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you, Chris. Item number 2, interlocal programming agreement with RTSD, LTU, and NDOT. Roger?
Maybe just a little bit of history. Over the course of more than 50 years, the RTSD has been an organization that's provided funding and helped support projects for both Lancaster County and the city of Lincoln. Always in these projects, there is a point in time where the RTSD may have led or just provided the finances. But at some point, that project became owned, operated, and maintained by Lancaster County or by the city of Lincoln. We are very close to that transition period with 33rd and Cornhusker. We get the environmental document signed. We need to, as Chris relayed, the next step is final design. We need to go out for an RFP or a proposal for that. So over the next 6 months, or at a point in time when Washington defines exactly what's going to happen with the grants and that money, we will be working with the city of Lincoln and NDOT. always works best to have agreements with NDOT to dispense federal money. And the FHWA money comes through NDOT, and that whole program is put together by signing a programming agreement between the entities. So what I envision our discussion and working as we finish, whereas the RTSD has been the primary lead and the owner of 33rd and Cornhusker. As we finish design and get ready for construction, that activity needs to be transferred over and accomplished through that programming agreement. So I would envision an interlocal agreement between the city and RTSD where we will continue to pledge the money and the resources and the work that we've done to this date. The city of Lincoln will pledge to the RTSD and to NDOT to follow all of the required regulations and rules to implement and build the project and make sure that the federal money and process is followed correctly. Chris and I will be working with LTU and NDOT over the next 6 months. Hopefully, if we get an answer from Washington, we'll be moving ahead more quickly on that. But this is a time of transition. It's still an RTSD project, but we need to remember when it's done and built and opened, that at that point in time it belongs to the city of Lincoln, and they are agreeing to maintain it, operate it, and take care of it at that point. So I just want everyone to realize that we're approaching that transition period, and we'll be working on that over the next 6 months.
When do you see us signing that agreement with the transfer?
Well, certainly the environmental documents got to be signed and back. If things moved quickly, and if we run the proposal through NDOT to select the final design, maybe in June, probably more likely maybe in September. I don't know. It just really, we are at the mercy of the new administration and what Washington is doing. But certainly over the next couple of meetings, I would hope we'd be at a point to have that all put together, brought in, and make sure the project continues to move ahead.
It could be approved tomorrow. We could never see it. It's just, we don't know what's going to happen with federal funding.
The thing I would remind board members and the public, we have said all along that the RTSD, with NDOT's commitment of $25 million, a $5 million commitment from the railroad, and the money we have been saving, this is a real project. This isn't pie in the sky. Certainly the grant would be a huge, huge success for the community and the taxpayers to reduce what the RTSD needs to pay. But the RTSD has been committed to finishing this project whether we get the grant or not. And certainly we're moving ahead with that idea that this is a real project and we're going to complete the project even if we don't get the grant. But we certainly hope we will.
And I think you're right. I think if any money's going to flow out of the feds, it's going to be things like this, right? I think this is a very high likelihood of getting the money if anything comes.
Very good.
Okay, so
The miscellaneous other railroad work?
yeah, I have a couple items that I would bring to the board's attention. The last meeting indicated that UNL and the RTSD had been working together, and we'd submitted a proposal to NDOT for a train notification study along Nebraska Parkway. Our proposal was not selected, so they are moving ahead with their proposal. So I am currently in conversations with LTU and NDOT about other opportunities or options that might be out there to deal with continued safety, notification, first responder access notice, and those kind of things, and would hope to be in a position to report back to the board in June if we think there's another viable option or direction that we ought to move in that direction. So our proposal was not accepted, so that's currently not moving ahead. BNSF is currently working on improving ties and the rail bed along from 56th and Nebraska Parkway back into Lincoln. They'll continue to work on that. OPPD had the Federal Rail Administration was out and did an inspection at 56th and Old Cheney to make sure all of the safety equipment was operating correctly, and my understanding was they didn't find any concerns there. So again, our Federal Rail folks continue to keep their eye on equipment here. And I don't remember whether I mentioned in the December meeting, so I will repeat it. FRA was here this winter. One of their obligations is to review on a regular basis the quiet zones that have been created throughout the country, and they did inspections of all of the quiet zones here in Lancaster County, Hickman, Waverly, the ones in Lincoln, and we went with them to make sure that all the safety equipment, the markings and the signings are there in place. And the reports that we got back was that everything seemed to be pretty good. There were a few minor signage and marking things that need to be corrected, and the cities are taking care of that. I don't have anything else to report on railroad work. BNSF will continue to do some capital work through the city, I think, this summer.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to item 12, report of other matters, if any. None. 13, any correspondence placed on file? Nope. Item number 14, anyone from the public wishing to make comment at this time?
Hello, members. My name is Andy Faust. I represent SMART, TDM, it's a rail organization in Nebraska. I'm also here as a concerned citizen. I got questions about the removing of the crossing on Northwest 12th Street. In my experience dealing with that, what is on the other side of that crossing? I can't tell you where exactly this crossing is being eliminated.
This is, if you drive north from the airport there's, I believe, like some warehouses in there, Andy. I'm
Okay.
not sure what they're used for specifically.
Okay, well, with my experience in that, it's not, Union Pacific does not own that track. It's actually owned by the warehouses or the companies that Union Pacific used to service. So is that $250,000, is that gonna take care of the crossing? Or is someone else, Union Pacific, putting up another amount to help share that cost? Can I speak here?
Yeah, go ahead. And if you would sign in too,
Okay.
please, for the record.
The city of Lincoln worked with and had agreements with Union Pacific, which we expected them to work with their customers. Those were spur lines serving, and there's actually 3 individual crossings and 4 tracks that were removed.
Okay.
And the RTSD, the city removed the tracks. They bid a contract. They had their contractor remove the tracks and put the paving back. And then they are going to do an additional improvement of Northwest 12th and Kingbird Road. There is one of the tracks is over on Kingbird going to a business. So all of those serve businesses, and we depend upon Union Pacific to indicate and sign an agreement that it was okay for those tracks to be removed from the public right-of-way. The RTSD is reimbursing the city for a portion of the cost of removing the tracks and putting pavement back.
Okay.
There isn't any cost. In fact, the city also reimbursed Union Pacific a small amount because they had flaggers out there in case there were trains that would come, which there haven't been. But they were there to approve the work being done, and the city and the RTSD is reimbursing just the city for a portion of the project cost within what we would call the railroad right-of-way corridor.
Okay.
No payments from the businesses or the railroad.
Okay. So the $250,000 was the entire amount?
The entire amount that the RTSD is contributing to the city. The city's cost to get the tracks and restore the rest of the pavement was nearly double that.
Okay, and
we
Union
only-
Pacific provided nothing.
No.
Okay. The other concern I had was the quarter-cent tax. As you all know, there's major concern with this vote come April. People are saying, you know, what did you do with my money last time? I'm pretty involved. I'm not your normal citizen, but this is the first time I've heard that the RTSD was receiving a portion of the quarter-cent tax in the previous 6 years. I just think that there needs to be better transparency with this vote come April with the city and also with the county. We need to know, as a citizen, I need to know, like, what are we going to do with the money that I'm being taxed? You know, like what projects, 33rd, for example, that's being, that percentage of that tax is going to the 33rd project. What other projects are going? Because as I know right now, talking to my neighbors, I don't think they're going to vote it through. And I think it's a good tax. I think it goes to good things in our community. But I just think the transparency needs to be there. Like, what are we going to do with the money? And as I hear right now, I don't even know if we're going to have 33rd. You know, if we're waiting for $66 million from this administration, it could be years before we get that money. And that's a huge part of, you know, who's going to bear the burden on that if we don't receive that infrastructure money that we just got. So that is just my personal opinion. I think we need to get it out there to our members, or not our members, but your constituents, and let them
Also
know.
memory kicking in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just to be transparent about where this tax is going, because, you know, tax is a big issue right now. To add to Roger, thank you for reaching out to UNL and having them file for that grant and then they weren't approved. I've met with numerous firefighters and chief of firehouses, specifically right there on Pine Lake, and they have major concern about being able to service people south of Pine Lake Railroad Crossing and also 70th Street. There's numerous times they told me they had numerous examples about where those two were blocked, and they had to have another firehouse attend to the person who was south of that, where they had to go out of their way to get to that person. As we all know, I've been up here speaking 2 or 3 times now, and there is another technology. It's at Texas A&M. I would encourage Roger and the RTSD to look into that technology. It's already established. It's a good technology. I think most of the members of the RTSD have access to an example of it. And if you don't, I'm glad to get it to you. So the only kind of hiccup we have right now is that line is under contract negotiations again between Union Pacific and BNSF. So I don't know. I think BNSF has a good chance of getting it because they are putting in a ton of money into that line, and they wouldn't put that money into it if they weren't going to get a contract. So the infrastructure, they're building up the infrastructure, and maybe that'll help out with block crossings by improving your infrastructure on that line, because it was a mess, because it wasn't ran on for over 30 years. So I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faust. Anyone else from the public wishing to comment? If not, our next item is adjournment.
Move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion by Sean, second by Justin to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Carlson,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes,
Bowers.
Yes.
we are adjourned. Thank you all.